We're getting right back to the phone calls here on Open Line tonight. We're having a great conversation about the sounds of Music City, and Caroline is on the line. Good evening, Caroline. How are you?
Yes, I'm doing well.
Good.
I just want to say that I visited the National Museum of African American Music back in November with a senior group from Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Nice.
And I enjoyed myself. Just had a wonderful time. I have a question for Mr. Washington. Well, not a question, but just ask him to do something. Would he speak about guitar player Johnny Jones, and also the artist that played at, he knows of any artists that played at Deborah's Lounge on 40th and the New Era on Charlotte, and I think the Cedar Bucket also on Charlotte.
Very good.
And I'm going to hang up and listen.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Caroline. We appreciate hearing from you tonight. I love how everybody's calling just to pick your brain. They want to hear a few stories.
Well, we had a lot of great artists and musicians up and down Jefferson Street playing in the clubs. Fred Waters was one of the premier artists, local artists that we had here in the clubs on Jefferson Street, and up at Deborah's. Deborah's was mostly jazz, and that's why Deborah's, and it wasn't on Jefferson Street. And so Deborah's didn't make it to the tree, that historical tree that I designed, and that tree represent Jefferson Street. The limbs on the tree represent the clubs and the bars on Jefferson Street, and the leaves on that tree represent the artists and musicians that actually played on Jefferson Street. And there were a lot of great artists and musicians. To say that Jimmy Church played the New Era Club, and it was a fun place to be because that's where a lot of the locals went to hang out. It was at the New Era Club. But Ike and Tina Turner played at the New Era Club. Also, B.B. King played at the New Era Club. Some of everybody actually played at that club at one time or another, because everybody wanted to connect with the community. And that's what's happening over at the museum, at the Jefferson Street Sound Museum. Folk are coming there to connect with their past. And the past is all on the walls in the Jefferson Street Sound Museum. And I do invite all of you to come out and get a little bit of that history from the past, and you can get it at the Jefferson Street Sound Museum.
Tell us when you're open.
Now, right now, I'm only open on Saturdays. Can't afford to open too much more than that.
I understand that.
But I'm open on Saturdays from 11 till 4 in the evening, and I'll go past 4 if we've got people in there. But during the week, it's by appointments. You can call a day ahead and make an appointment, and I will find time to come and take you through the museum. And I am the curator. I am the janitor. I am some of all of it, and I enjoy it. I enjoy getting up, preparing the place for guests, because I know they're going to get fed if they come in there.
You are Mr. Everything.
I think also, Mr. Washington, you should mention some of the programming, because both of our museums connect the past to the present with our programming. Like we have the emergent artists.
Tell me about that.
And well, it's what it sounds like. Artists that are coming up the ranks, like the ones you've mentioned, and you get to experience them in their live performances at the museum, especially on the weekends. But there's also lots of other programs that you can find on our website. And we were talking earlier off air about your art show recently. The museum, for example, right now has in their feature gallery has artists throughout the country that their art represents music and tells a story of music or moved the artist to produce this medium, and so that's very exciting. But
we're doing reenactments. Like last week, it was Etta James, and this week, I think it's going to be Marion James. I think, I'm not exactly sure. You'll have to call in and check. And Sania Jameson is our director for all of that, and she takes care of that. I'm not as familiar, but I should be, being up here, I should be able to promote a little bit better.
We'll give you a pass on it.
Okay, but we are doing reenactments, and we're having a good time over there on Sundays,
Nice.
and that's every Sunday.
Okay.
For the rest of this month, for sure.
Wonderful.
And it starts at 5, I think 5 to 8.
Let's get back to the phone lines real quick. We have a few folks hanging on. George is with us. Good evening, George.
Hello.
Hello, go ahead.
Hey, I'd like to say that the Mr. Washington, he's got Club Baron. And also, I wanted to know if he ran into Iron Board Sam. He took an iron board and made a keyboard out of it.
Oh, wow.
So now the one thing I want to speak to him about is, Mr. Washington, did you know Noble Blackwell?
All right, let's hear from you. Go ahead. Is that it? Is that it, George?
No, I want to say this.
Okay.
Noble Blackwell had a night train on Channel 5, and it had all the great artists coming in, and the local artists. I would like Channel 5 to bring it out of the archives and show it to the people. So that's what I want to say. Now, thank you for your time.
Thank you, George, for calling in tonight.
I did know Noble Blackwell. I knew his his nieces and nephew. I did know them, and my friend Bubba Stafford worked up there at Channel 5, over here. We're here at Channel 5, but he worked here during that period. And Night Train to Nashville was the first variety TV show that we had in Nashville. And as you said earlier, all of the they didn't have to go far to get acts to be on that show, because it was all right here on Jefferson Street and in North Nashville. Although a lot of them, people like B.B. King, Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix at that time was just in the band. He played guitar in the band at Night Train. Marion James was one of the musicians that played in the band. Frank Howard was with the Valentines. These guys were great on Night Train, and Frank and I came out of the same neighborhood. Herbert Hunter was my best friend, who I actually came to Jefferson Street with as far as the music scene was concerned. Herbert was on Night Train. So yeah, I did know and watch Night Train quite a bit. Ted Jarrett prepared a lot of those artists for Night Train. Bob Holmes was a big time producer, during that time. My friend Jesse Boyce, and I have to call his name every time I get a chance, but he was not on Night Train, but a great musician around here who played with Little Richard for about 20 years. He was Little Richard's bass guitar player. So I know I'm missing out on calling a lot of names, but come by the museum and let's talk about it.
Yeah.
The caller just brought up Ironing Board Sam, and we have the actual ironing board, and it is a sight to behold. It definitely tells and demonstrates the story of this is not just musical performance, it's the whole performance. These artists were whole artists, both visually and auditory.
Ironing Board Sam, just to bring another thought to the table, when he got to work, he forgot his his keyboard stand.
And that's how.
And they went to the back and got the ironing board and brought the ironing board up. So he used it as a keyboard stand that night, and from then on it's been Ironing Board Sam. And
folks, you would not tell it's an ironing board. It's been completely decorated, and you can see each little piece of his work on there to just make himself distinctive.
Tell me more about what folks will see at the National Museum for African American Music and what they can do there. It's not just about going and seeing and reading plaques. It is interactive.
Yes, absolutely. Every gallery has an interactive, actually. You can sing with Dr. Bobby Jones Choir. You can spit your own hip-hop beats and rhymes, and you can have that dance challenge in one of our galleries as well. So there is a lot to see and do, but what you're going to do is walk through the timeline of American history and music and see these performance pieces, what the artist wore, what the artist created.
So very neat. Okay, we have another caller on the line. Ed is hanging in there with us. Ed, thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Hello, people. How's it going?
Good.
Good. I was born in Nashville, Tennessee in January of 1947. Now, you got to understand, I tell people in the 1950s, I grew up in Jim Crow Nashville. I remember getting on buses and it saying, coloreds to the rear. Stuff like that. It's a disgrace what they did with I-40 at Jefferson Street. The other thing, I used to work at Fort Campbell back in the day where Jimi Hendrix was, and I went to clubs up around there, and they had pictures of Hendrix, playing at those clubs. And thank you for mentioning Little Richard, the architect of rock and roll. Thank you. That's all I have to say. I have plenty more, but I don't want to take up a bunch of your time.
Ed, you're very sweet. Thank you for calling in. And Little Richard, maybe in the last year or two, just added to the Walk of Fame, I do believe. Isn't that correct?
I'm not
sure. But we definitely, that's another artist that you're going to find in the museum, and placing his context and influence on all these other genres. So I think there are a lot of folks, like Ed was just describing, looking to hear this story be told. And that's why I was telling Mr. Washington, he's such a great steward to this narrative.
And I did get a chance to meet Little Richard on 2 or 3 different occasions. Because of Jesse Boyce being his bass player. And Jesse and I were very, very good friends since '74. Is how long Jesse and I have been friends. So it did give me a chance to get backstage with Little Richard, So there was some perks in knowing.
All right, we have to take another quick break. When we come back, phone lines are open, by the way. So if you would call in and like to take a stroll down memory lane, let's do it. 615-737+ is the number to call. Stay with us.